That's a very real possibility. And the other possibility, in my view, is pretty much an uncontrolled escalation into full-blown war that would become a regional war and that could become a world war. I think we're really at that moment right now. Maybe that sounds naive because why not next week? Why not the week after? Why not the week after? But the problem is that we're not in a stable situation where we can choose one or the other.
So Tucker Carlson just interviewed Jeffrey Sachs, Columbia economist who's advised over 100 governments, and he's warning about World War III breaking out in weeks. With Trump's shoot-to-kill orders and ceasefire extensions creating an unstable powder keg, Sachs is sounding alarms about imminent global catastrophe. Let's break this down.
As we speak, the world economy is reeling. It's reeling because as everybody has learned in their geography in the last few weeks, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. As long as it's closed, it means that there's a worldwide economic crisis building. So time is not permissive right now. We can't say, well, we'll decide in another month. We'll see how things go. We'll negotiate and see what happens. Right now, there is an ongoing, building, global, serious economic crisis. And that is because a narrow stretch of water through which comes an enormous, extremely important strategic flow of resources.
He's absolutely right about the economics. 20% of global oil flows through that 30-mile strait, plus massive fertilizer exports. Trump's current Iran strikes are creating exactly this unstable timeline pressure. The world economy can't absorb weeks of closure without triggering recession-level price spikes across energy and food.
And if that threat does not lead to Iran conceding, then we have to follow through, not with more time and waiting because of this unstable situation, but we have to return to massive bombing, this time even more. And what we can suspect on that alternative is that the Iranians will, of course, strike back and strike back very hard and very rapidly. And what we have all learned also since February 28th, since the start of this war, is that the entire Gulf region is exposed to missile fire from Iran, as is Israel, in fact, because we also have come to understand that the anti-missile defenses are permeable, limited, even depleted in many areas.
This escalation dynamic is already playing out. Trump's shoot-to-kill orders and ceasefire extensions are creating the exact pattern described here. Maximum pressure that demands follow-through. Iran's October missile strikes prove they can penetrate Israeli air defenses, hitting military bases with precision despite billions in defensive systems.
And while I'm an economist, simple economist, not a military analyst, having watched this for decades and tried to understand from the military analysts, I think it would be but a few weeks before a very, very large part of the infrastructure of the region was destroyed.
The Gulf.
In Iran and in the Gulf, and a lot in Israel as well. And the result of that would not be peace followed by some easy recovery. It would be a global calamity brought upon us in a few short weeks. So to return to the basic question, Trump could say, we're not going to go to disaster. We just pull back.
Modern warfare's speed is terrifying. Look at Ukraine. Critical infrastructure destroyed in days, not months. The Gulf region's oil refineries, power grids, and ports are all within Iranian missile range. This wouldn't be gradual destruction like World War II. It's precision strikes collapsing entire economic systems in weeks.
Let's start by recalling the 160 schoolgirls killed on the first day by apparently Palantir's AI system. Well, like we find out every day when we're looking at our screen, this is an AI, it can make mistakes. Well, apparently Palantir's mistake was to kill 160 innocent schoolgirls. This is not definitively known, but it's what is being widely reported. So we will perhaps someday find out what really happened. Iran has lost thousands of people. Iran has been devastated, tens of billions of dollars of damages that will take years and years basically to recover. For me, as a development economist whose whole career over half a century is to try to build things, I don't like to see things knocked down this way. The mindlessness of it, the cruelty of it, the brazen destruction, the glorification of this violence by Hegseth and others, I find completely, totally repulsive.
Palantir's AI targeting systems are being used extensively in current operations. The reported school incident highlights how algorithmic warfare can cause massive civilian casualties in seconds. Pete Hegseth, Trump's defense secretary, has indeed been celebrating these strikes publicly, showing the dangerous glorification of automated violence that Sachs condemns.
In 1953, Iran was a parliamentary democracy. Iran had not invaded or attacked another country for a century and a half. This was a peaceful country. It had been invaded several times. But it was a democracy that didn't threaten anybody, didn't want to threaten anybody, hadn't threatened anybody, hadn't invaded any place actually since the 1790s in a brawl over who controlled Basra. So, in other words, very esoteric things from the 1790s. But since then, Iran had been bothered, but had not bothered anybody else. And in 1953, the Iranian prime minister elected, respected, Prime Minister Mossadegh, had the audacity to say the thing never to be said by this region, which is, I think the oil under our ground is Iranian, not British. And when he uttered that thought, that maybe Iran's oil belonged to Iran, immediately the British Empire, in the form of MI6, came to the new ascendant American empire in the guise of the CIA and said, we got to overthrow this guy, which of course they did successfully. They made what today we would call a color revolution. They stirred up protests in the streets. They stirred up unrest. And Mossadegh was chased from power, and the United States installed what the Persian Empire would have called a satrapy, meaning that Iran became a kind of province of the American empire under ultimately CIA rule.
Operation Ajax is documented CIA history. They overthrew Iran's democracy for British Petroleum's oil access. This reveals Trump's current war isn't about nuclear threats or terrorism. It's about imperial control over a resource-rich nation that escaped American dominance 70 years ago and has been targeted ever since.
So when Trump gives his explanations for the current war, he says, oh, nuclear or this or that. These are convenient current explanations for something that has been on his mind for 46 years as well. Because the American empire suffered a slight. A country got out from under American CIA control, which you don't allow to happen. And from 1980, it's been nonstop war. It's been an economic war what our Treasury Secretary, who I increasingly regard to be a thug, basically, not a Treasury Secretary, but someone who delights and gloats in crushing other economies by using financial means or trade sanctions or financial blockages, and delights in it, explained in Davos this year in a Fox News interview with Maria Bartiromo that our statecraft destroyed the Iranian economy last year.
That Treasury Secretary comment is revealing. Celebrating economic destruction as statecraft shows this administration's true priorities. Trump's obsession with Iran spans decades, not just his presidency. The nuclear justifications are convenient cover for what's really a resource grab and imperial control operation.
And the clean break strategy said, we will never accept, we being our new government, never accept a state of Palestine. We will occupy all of what had been the British Palestine, British mandatory Palestine. In other words, we'll control Gaza, we'll control the West Bank, we'll control all of Jerusalem, and we may control other places as well. We'll never do that, but we'll face resistance. When we make that claim and hold on to this territory, we'll definitely face resistance. We'll definitely face resistance of militant groups. But what Netanyahu and his colleagues in the United States said was, rather than fighting those militant groups directly, we need to bring down the governments in the Middle East and West Asia that support those groups. And that is what's called the clean break strategy. The clean break was the clean break from the peace accords, from the land for peace idea that Israel would return to its borders, there would be a Palestinian state in return for peace. That's what international law says. But what Israel says is we're never returning. There's never going to be a state of Palestine. In fact, we're going to have what we call Greater Israel, which is all of Palestine, including Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, legal Israel, but also expanded parts of the region.
The 1996 Clean Break Strategy document laid out this exact plan: regime change across 7 Middle Eastern nations to enable Greater Israel expansion. Iran is the final target after Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq were destabilized. This current war is the culmination of a 30-year strategic blueprint.
And those governments were Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And we've now been pulled into Israel's 7 wars. 6 of those wars have led to bloodbaths and disasters, from Libya, still in civil war, Sudan, unbelievably, in 2 civil wars because we broke the country apart, and each of those 2 parts now has its own civil war. Somalia, there's not even a government. There is a government, actually, a very nice prime minister that I know, but barely governance in the country. Lebanon, we see it's an invaded, basically destroyed country. Syria, the U.S. and Israel worked for 15 years from Obama until this past year to overthrow the government. That was an active covert regime change operation. Iraq, the 2003 war and the debacle that lasted for years after that. And Iran was the last. So 6 of the 7 places are in chaos.
The systematic destruction is undeniable. 6 countries turned into failed states, costing America trillions while creating massive refugee crises. This reveals the United States has been implementing Israel's expansion strategy for decades, with Iran as the final piece requiring direct military confrontation.
And so part of the motivation now was revenge, bring Iran back into the empire. But part of the benefit of bringing Iran back into the American empire is you get the oil. And he thought within one day he'll get the oil, because just like removing Maduro, he thinks, gave America Venezuela's oil, he thought killing the Iranian governmental leadership, starting with this religious supreme leader and then the top officials of the government that were meeting that day with the supreme leader, he would take the oil. So that's the tableau. This is why it's hard to take the exit ramp, because there were reasons for this war, to my mind, cruel, illegal, delusional. So I don't abide by any of those reasons, but there were reasons for this war. And taking the off-ramp means that none of those would be fulfilled.
Trump's Venezuela oil seizure attempts show this pattern perfectly. Regime change for resource control. He genuinely believes killing Iran's leadership would hand him their oil reserves immediately, just like removing Maduro was supposed to give America Venezuela's resources. It's naked imperial resource grabbing driving escalation.
And instead, what you get is just both sides unleashing their arsenals. And what will happen in a short period of time is not a closure of shipping, but a destruction of the physical capacities of providing the oil and the gas and the fertilizers and the petrochemicals and the other very core commodities for the world economy. And it doesn't take that much to bring the world economy into a tailspin, because you don't need to close down half the oil supply. You might need to shut off 20% of the world oil supply, and that by enough will send the prices soaring, make Americans really suffer across the board, because it's not only at the gas pump and not only in the utility bills, but also in the cost of food, which will soar from this as well, because there will be a worldwide disruption of food supplies coming from this, because we're a very significant proportion of the urea, which underpins the nitrogen-based fertilizers of the world, come from this region.
Look at recent gas price spikes from minor supply disruptions. Even small percentage losses cause massive price increases. Nitrogen fertilizer shortages would devastate American food costs within months. The destruction happens in weeks, but rebuilding those production facilities takes years, creating sustained global economic crisis.
And I have to say, I'm sorry to say it, Tucker, but every few days I get an email from somebody who says, I really appreciate what you say, Professor Sachs, but I do want you to know that we're in the end times and that this is all as prophesied. And so thank you for your voice. They're not hostile messages. They're very nice, sweet people who say we're in the end times. I'm hoping we're not in the end times. This is the basic point. We should have some prudence. Somebody should reach the President of the United States and say, stop before disaster.
When a Columbia economist who's advised governments worldwide starts receiving end times emails from ordinary Americans, that's not political hyperbole. It's serious foreign policy expertise recognizing genuine civilizational risk. Sachs isn't being dramatic. He's watching institutional safeguards completely collapse in real time.